Alright, so here's where we are. Profile is looking good. I got the flats up to a 120 grit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and toss this back into the forge and get it up to above critical. I'm going to put it in this right here. This is just hardwood ash. I get asked a lot the purpose of putting this in here. It's just to anneal it, to make it soft enough to drill and everything. A lot of times when you work with steel, especially with Damascus, it can work harden as you heat it up on the grinder and dunk it in the water. And then when you go to drill it, it's a real pain in the butt to get the handle pin holes and everything in it. So I've learned by watching other knife makers, they put it in, usually they use vermiculite. Hardwood ash works, a clay-based cat litter will work as well. And the whole point is to heat it up above critical, stick it in there and let it slowly cool down. Makes everything nice and soft. Another way to address handle pin holes in work hardened steel is with a carbide tipped drill bit. I've actually done it with masonry bit before. Do suggest though getting a decent brand because the super cheap ones don't tend to work too well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get this in the forge and we'll get it stuck in here and we'll get it nailed. Alright, now I'm going to scribe the edge of the knife to get ready to grind the bevels. I've already applied the layout fluid. You can also use a Sharpie for this. Even spray paint works. I've just got some blue Dicam layout fluid. I've already got everything set up. I'm going to scribe the edge, turn the knife over, scribe it again, and that'll give me a nice line to follow down the center of the blade here. I get asked frequently what this tool here is. This is just a height gauge. What I like about this particular height gauge is you can actually get them to where this is just one solid piece and you can't replace this little piece here on the end. What I like about this one is I can actually unscrew this here and remove this and actually take a carpenter's pencil and shave it down a bit and stick it in here. So when I go to scribe on handles for hidden tang knives on a block of wood, I can do it with a pencil versus scratching the wood. And so that's pretty neat. I actually saw Kyle Royer do that, and that influenced the purchase of this item with the replaceable deal here. Anyway, but yes, this is a height gauge. You can also determine center lines with drill bits that are the same thickness of the steel that you're using. And so that's just a little tip right there. A lot of you knife makers already know that. Some of you newer guys may not. But with that being said, let's get the file guide on this and let's get the bevels roughed in. Alright, there we are right off the grinder. Get the bevels roughed in, got them nice and even. I did take one of my 1-inch scallop belts and went around the whole knife in all these areas here to knock down the sharp edge. Helps reduce any kind of stress risers that may be there if I don't. So there we go. Alright, let's get this bad boy heat treated. everything went great in the quench and in the temper. You can see that pattern starting to peek out there. I tempered this for 2 1-hour cycles at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I'm going to jump on the grinder and get everything cleaned up, get our bevels finished up, and then we'll move on to some hand sanding. Alright, see you shortly. Alright, now that we got the blade finished up on hand sanding, I'm going to move my attention over here to the handle scales and get them ready for drilling and fit up. So what I've done here is I'm using these resin handle scales. If you're wondering where I got these at, I got them off of Etsy. They were a good price. They're nice and wide, so I could actually do wider handle profiles if I want to. But anyway, though, back to the project at hand. So what I've done is I've covered these with masking tape because I want to drill through both at once. Because with this pattern on here, I would like to keep it as uniform as possible. And by drilling each individual handle scale, that might get a little out of whack. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is check and make sure that I have it the way that I want it. I'm just going to put a couple of drops of super glue here. Stick them together, make sure they're good and even, and then we can drill them and know that we're going to be mated up with our pattern the best we can be. Our holes will go through both of them nice and straight. So I'm going to let these set up and then we'll get them drilled. Alright, I got the tape pulled off. So what I'm going to do now is come in here and we're going to put our pins back in. I'm just going to scribe around the outside. And once I've done that, I'm going to come in here with my Sharpie and we'll put a mark. That way, as I'm working, I don't get confused. I've done it several times before, and it's not good to mess your handle skills up. So I'm going to do the same process on this one, and then we'll get them over the bandsaw, get them cut out, get them shaped, and move on along. Alright, so I've got everything cleaned up around the perimeter. I am going to come in here, and a lot of times on knives you'll see where they leave the fronts of the scales square, and that's perfectly fine. I prefer to taper these to put a little bit of an angle on them. I think it's more comfortable, allows for a better pinch grip up on the blade. And so what I'm going to do here is come in here with a pencil, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it on each side. And I'll double check these when I get off camera to make sure they're even. But what we're going to do is we will grind up to these lines using the set the platen at an angle and grind up to these lines, which will give us a nice flow into the blade and be a lot more comfortable. I'll show you in a second. Alright, so now that I got the perimeter of these handle scales shaped and the front end shaped, the next thing I'm going to do is, I haven't glued this up yet, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start profiling the handle, get these edges knocked down, get everything ground up and cleaned up. Because it's being a Damascus knife, I want to go ahead and etch it to where everything shows. Here on the channel, a lot of times do Damascus. I don't, I just don't take the time to do it, but a lot of times off camera on knives I sell, I do it. And so I'm going to go ahead and etch it to where all of the Damascus can be seen all the way around. And so to do that, you need to grind the handle scales pretty much to finish. Get all of your hand sanding finished up on all of this before moving on to the etch. So now that these pins are in here and they're short enough I can work on this knife, I'm going to take it over, probably put a 120 belt on, get everything cleaned up, and then we'll move on to hand sanding the handle to completion, and then we'll get this knife etched and get it put in the coffee. Alright, back at it.